Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission for Thursday, October 14th. Happy to have everybody here with us today. Before we get started and call the meeting to order, just a couple of early items here. If this is your first time with us, if you could turn your cell phones to silent. In fact, everybody could turn their cell phone to silent, that'd be great. And if it is your first time and you've never been with us and you would like to be heard on an item today, out on the front desk there are some white slips of paper. They look just like this. You can fill one of those out if you haven't already and provide it to staff. And at the appropriate time, we'll call on you so you can tell us whatever you'd like to know. When you get up to the podium, start out by giving us your name and address for the record. Make sure to adjust the microphone so it's right to your mouth. That's helpful so everybody can hear what you're saying. And then we allot you 5 minutes to tell us whatever you'd like us to know. If it runs long or we have redundant comments or something, I'll let you know and we'll continue our discussion. But with that, again, we appreciate everybody joining us and we'll get started. First order of business is to receive the minutes of the September 23rd, 2021 meeting. If there's no discussion from planning commissioners, I'll take a motion on those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move we receive the minutes from the September 23rd meeting.
Thank you. I'll take the second on PrimeGov when that's available. Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And those minutes are received. Next order of business is our continuance requests. We have a few of those today. Mr. Chambliss?
We have 5 uncontested continuance requests. The first is item 28, PUD 1790, request deferral to October 28. Item 29, PC 10753, defer to November 18th. Item 30, PC 10767, defer to December 9. And item 31, CE 1060, defer indefinitely.
And I'll just note for the purpose of the record, on the published agenda, the agenda item number and the case number were incorrect. They didn't correspond correctly, but the case numbers and the deferral dates are accurate. So again, just to be clear, this is items 28, 29, 30, and 31 on today's agenda, and PUD 1790, PC 10753, PC 10767, and CE 1060. If you wanted to be heard on any of those items today, this is your chance. If not, we're going to continue them as read by Mr. Chambliss. Okay, seeing no discussion, I'll take a motion on the continuances as read.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the uncontested continuance requests as read.
Okay, I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And those continuances have been approved. Next item on our agenda are new requests, and I believe we have a number of those, Mr. Chambliss.
We have 5 new requests for continuance. The first is item 10, SP 554, defer to October 28. Item 18, SPUD 1336, defer to October 28. Item 19, SPUD 1340, defer to November 18th. Item 22, PUD 1848, defer to October 28th. And item 23, C7363, defer to October 28th.
Is there anybody here that wanted to be heard on one of those items today? Okay. If there's no discussion on those from commissioners or concerns, I'll take a motion on those continuances as read.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the continuances as read.
Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. And those continuances are approved. Next item on the agenda today is our consent docket. We do have several items on the consent agenda today. You want to read those for us, Mr. Chambliss?
Consent agenda is items 1 through 6. That's PC 10765 to rezone 14700 North Sarah Road from PUD 445 to the AA district. Item 2, C7359, final plat of Redbud Villas, located south of 74th and west of Council. Item 3, C7360, final plat of Cottonwood Trails 8, located east of Sarah Road and south of Northwest 36th Street. Item 4 is C7361, replat of lots 1 through 12, Block 2 of Rockwell Heights Industrial Park. That's located south of Southwest 59th and west of Rockwell. Item 5, C-7362, final plat of Edge Creek, located north of 150th Street and Meridian Avenue. And item 6, C-7365, final plat of Waterstone 2, located east of Northwestern Avenue and north of Northwest 150th Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chambliss. Is there anybody who wanted to be heard on any of those items today? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion on the consent docket as read by Mr. Chambliss.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent docket as read.
Okay, I have a motion, and I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. Please cast your votes when available. All votes should be cast. And those items are approved. Next item on our agenda begins our items requiring separate vote. First item on that agenda today is item number 7. Mr. Chambliss.
Item 7 is PUD SP 1795A. That's a application for specific plan located in PUD 1795 at 11800 Northwestern Avenue.
Applicant present, go ahead and start out by giving us your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. This is a specific plan for an application that was rezoned, I believe, last year. The site plan is a little bit different in that originally you saw a traditional garden-style multifamily project. It has changed into a townhome project, but it was still designed to conform to the approved PUD. With that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zitzo. I'll just note for the purpose of the record that staff's review of the specific plan for the development indicates that the proposal is consistent with the technical requirements of PUD 1795 and the Master Development Statement and Master Development Plan. Commissioner Pennington, this is your ward, sir. Do you have any questions or comments for the applicant?
No questions or comments. I'm in support.
Okay. Is there anybody who wanted to be heard on this item today? Again, just out of an abundance of caution, this is PUD SP 1795A. All right. Seeing nobody, if there's no discussion from commissioners, Commissioner Pennington, I'll take a motion, sir.
I move approval of item 7. Excuse me. I move that we recommend approval of item 7 to City Council.
This is final action from
Oh,
us.
it's final action. Civic plan, duh. I move approval.
I have a motion. I'll take a second on PrimeGov. Motion to approve has been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And the item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 8. Mr. Chambliss.
Item 8, C-7364, final plat of the T, Oklahoma City Phase 1, located north of Southeast 59th Street and west of South Sunny Lane Road.
Great. Go ahead. Start out by giving us your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Tibbetts with Express Building, 3925 Southeast 59th. This is our final plat for our development of townhouses. We're waiting on engineering approval to get started on the infrastructure. Everything else seems to be pretty well lined out. We're trying to get the plat approved so that we can go through and get our building permits.
Okay, and you're aware of the 5 technical evaluations? And
Yes.
you're in agreement with those, and you do need the variance on TE number 2, is that correct?
Yes, we do need the variance.
Okay. Commissioner Privet is not with us today. I would just say that our staff report notes, as it relates to the variance request, that addressing from the adjacent approved streets would be difficult and potentially confusing for emergency vehicles, mail delivery, and sanitation trucks. As a result of that, the developer is requesting a variance to section 5.4.2E of the subdivision regulations to allow the private access drives to be named. That certainly makes sense to me, and staff seems to agree. Is there any discussion on this from commissioners? Is there anybody who wanted to be heard on C-7364 today? Okay. If you could come up and give us your name and address for the record, please, ma'am, and then we'd love to hear whatever you want us to know. I can.
Okay,
There
it's
you go.
Brenda Taylor, and I'm speaking for my mom, Donna Worsler. She lives at 3705 Southeast 59th Street, and there's a survey marker that's in her driveway on this. And I talked to Mr. Tibbetts the other day, and I just want to make sure that, because it's encroaching on her driveway.
Mr. Tibbetts, do you want to try to address that just
Over here,
as a
Mom.
courtesy?
Yes, we did speak last night about it, and I drove by before we came here just so I could get my eyes around what the exact issue is. It does look like the land that we own does shift along Southeast 59th 3 or 4 feet onto her driveway. And I told her that we'd have the plan here, so if you go to the site plan, I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. All we've got is a brick wall going down. You've actually got the building layouts. Yeah, so we actually are kind of jutting the opposite way from her development. And like I said, I think it's 3 or 4 feet, and we plan on building a brick wall along there that'll be outside of her driveway range. So I think it's going to be a non-issue
Okay.
based on everything I've seen.
Does that help you, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're free after, I'm happy to talk it over with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, and his information, his contact information is provided on the application, so you could certainly secure it there if you need additional correspondence with him.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
Sure. Thanks for coming down today. I don't have any discussion on this. Is there anybody else that wanted to be heard? Okay. If not, I'll need a motion from somebody else in Commissioner Privett's absence, and we do need 2 separate motions, one for the variance first and then on the item itself.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the variance to section 5.4.2.E.5 of the subdivision regulations.
Okay, I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes on the variance only. All votes should be cast, and the variance is approved. We also need a motion on the item itself, and this is a final plat, so it's final action from us, Commissioner Pennington.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of item 8.
I have a motion to approve the final plat for C-7364. I'll take the second on PrimeGov.
Sorry, is it subject to these TEs listed?
Yes, it is subject to
Yes,
the
sir.
TEs listed. I confirm that with the applicant. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. And the application is approved. Next item on today's agenda is item number 9.
That's Spud 1348, application by Jason and Shannon Easter to rezone 1400 Northwest 92nd from the R1 district to the Spud 1348 district.
Excellent. Start out by giving us your name and address, please.
Okay, I'm Shannon Easter. Our address is 1400 Northwest 92nd Street. The plan that we proposed was to rezone our current property from residential 1 to residential 2.
Okay. Commissioner Powers, this is your ward, ma'am. Do you have questions or concerns on this item for the applicant?
Questions, concerns, not either one of those exactly. I spoke this morning to Jason Easter.
Yep.
And he told me that you would be coming. He's been deployed. He's in the Navy. is
Yes,
that
yeah.
right?
He's flying.
But there were just a couple of things about this. I'm all in favor of the idea of the increased density, especially these, individual single-family units. I'm all in favor of that. But we did talk about limiting the uses to the single-family and 2 and 3-family and eliminating the multi-family residential. And he was agreeable with that. I want to check this with staff. JJ, when I read multifamily, I think like R4, since it's got R2 and R3. That's not some kind of other thing that's just a redundancy for anything more than R1, is it?
Right.
Okay, so we're going to eliminate the multifamily residential use. We talked about having the building with a hipped or pitched roof, because, mass increases with flat roofs, I think, and he was all right with that as well. And then we talked about decreasing, my staff report says the building height's 3 stories or 35 feet. And we talked about limiting that to whatever the R1 is, which is already 2 stories, and is it 31 feet, JJ? I can't even remember.
It's 2.5 and 35. That's right.
Okay, oh, it's 35. So, okay, 2.5 and 35. So whatever it is, that's what we talked about. And then we talked a little bit about the access They're requesting to retain access onto McKinley, where the back property is adjacent there. So the way the staff report reads, I just wasn't very clear. I don't have any problem with there being access onto Northwest 92nd, and I think there will need to be, but I want to be sure that's just one driveway and not two different driveways.
Yep, one's fine.
And then the last thing was, I was a little confused by the language under item 6, parking, where it says a garage space, a garage spaces, a minimum of 8.5 by 18. There may actually end up being a two-car garage instead of a one-car garage. So I think maybe if the language were just that up to 2 parking spaces, within the garage can be counted toward the parking requirements, that's fine, and he was okay with that as well.
I agree.
So otherwise, I mean, I think this will be a good use of this land to increase the density just a little bit. And I noticed there are other empty lots, one
There
directly
are.
across the street and so on, so maybe we'll get something started here.
Yep.
Commissioner Powers, just to confirm, I missed one of them, but you kind of read off what would be a total of 5 technical evaluations to add. I'm assuming you've got that language.
No, not really, but
I had TE1 would be delete 8200.12.
yes,
TE2 would be limit height to 2.5 stories and 35 feet.
yes.
TE3 is the one I missed, but
3 would be
Three.
the hipped or pitched roof.
thank you. TE4 would be one driveway on Northwest 92nd Street.
Right.
And TE5 would be that 2 parking spaces within the garage shall count toward parking requirements.
Absolutely. And so just to be clear, the access under number 9 would be 2 total points of access, 1 on each street. 1 on 92nd, 1 on McKinley.
Okay. Just want to make sure if we get to a point where we make a motion, if there's anybody here that wants to be heard, don't panic. We're not doing anything. We're just trying to make sure we have it straight so we can communicate it to people if they want to be heard on this item, that they understand what's being changed.
I haven't heard from anybody else on this issue.
Is there anybody here that wants to be heard today on SPUD 1348? Okay, well, sounds like we're in luck.
If the other commissioners don't have any comments or questions, I'd like to move approval then of this item with the 5 very clearly articulated TEs.
Okay, I'll take that. I have a motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1348, subject to the 5 technical evaluations that were read into the record by myself and Commissioner Powers. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes when available. All votes should be cast, and that application is recommended for approval. Ms. Easter, thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for your husband's service.
And good luck.
Next item on our agenda today is item number 10, which has been continued to October the 28th. That's SP 554. So our next item is item number 11. Mr. Chambliss?
Item 11 is PC 10756 by Jerome and Maria Espiritu to rezone 9213 South Sooner Road from the C1 to the from AA to the C1 district.
Welcome back.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jerome Espiritu, 13233 Southeast 104th Street in Oklahoma City. So we decided to go to C1 from request to C1 from AA.
Okay, excellent. And this is also in Commissioner Privett's ward. Is there any other questions or comments on this from commissioners?
I don't recall that there were other issues that we spoke about specifically. It was just the reduction in the density or the intensity of the zoning request.
Yeah, I'll paraphrase it, and if somebody remembers it differently, they can interject. But it was really just a debate about whether or not Mr. Espiritu understood going to C1 what he'd be sacrificing and giving him time to think about that as opposed to considering maybe an SPUD. So that was the discussion we wanted to let him take some time to have, and he's come back with the C1 application, and
Yes.
presumably you're comfortable.
Yes.
We did receive, I think, a couple letters in opposition to this. Is there anybody that wants to be heard on this item today? This is PC 10756. Okay. If there's nobody who wants to be heard, I'm in support of the application. I don't know if anybody feels differently, but unless there's discussion, I'd take a motion from somebody in Commissioner Privett's absence.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of PC 10756.
Okay, I have a motion. I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And your application is recommended for approval. Thank you very much for your patience and for
Thank you
working with
very
us.
much.
Good luck. Next item on the agenda today is item number 12.
Item 12 is PC 10766 to rezone 5725 South Harvey Court from the R4 district to the C3 district.
Applicant with us? Hi.
I am in the representation because they don't speak too much English.
Okay, would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Cynthia Jimenez, 6001 Southwest 12th Street, apartment 425.
Okay, 601, and you said it was Southwest what?
6001 Southwest 12th Street, apartment 425.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead and tell us what you'd like us to know about this.
They're proposing to change the existing residential-based zoning to a commercial-based zoning that will permit commercial use and development.
Okay. Anything else you think we need to know at the moment?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything else you think we need to know at the moment?
No, we're pretty much the area, we consider that it is between a lot of commercials around it. There is shopping centers around it, and we don't believe that that will be difficult. We think it's a good place to set up a mechanic shop. The shop is just going to do very light workshop, nothing heavy to repair, no transmissions change or anything, nothing about paint or anything that could make people uncomfortable or anything. So we think it's a good place to locate a commercial shop.
Okay, and forgive me, what did you say your last name was, ma'am?
Jimenez.
Jimenez. Okay. If you wouldn't mind, Ms. Jimenez, I do have a number of people who have signed up to speak on this item. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll have you step aside for just a minute, and I'm going to call on some folks who have signed up. The first person who signed up to speak is John Pettis. Mr. Pettis, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Pettis, 228 Robert S. Kerr here on behalf of the Refreshing Church, which is located at 5716 South Harvey Avenue. And the Refreshing Church, some of their members are here today. Would you please stand? You may be seated. The Refreshing Church, again, is here to protest this current use. Currently, this use is zoned R4. When you look to the property, again, to the north and to the west, when you look at this particular property to the west, is the church's property, which is a total of approximately 12 acres. The current property is zoned R4, and we strongly believe the R4 zoning is the best use for the land and not C3. If this particular property was on a busy street, then perhaps, yes, C3 would be the best use. But unfortunately, this particular property abuts R4 residential property. What we have here is an issue of C3 versus R4. C3 versus R4. We believe the C3 use triggers the compatibility issue again next to R4 development. North is R4 and west is R4. We believe the applicant is using this zoning process to continue to use his property for junk. You all see the pictures in front of you. Again, we believe that the applicant is using this process not as a business not as a automobile shop, but again, junk. Again, we believe R4 is the best use for this particular property. And again, we believe that the applicant will not follow the standards that is mentioned in the staff report because, again, the picture shows what this property is currently being used. The best use of this property is, we believe, R4, and again, not C3. And it would be, the church would feel more comfortable if this was perhaps a spud, but to do a blanket C3 zoning that abuts R4, that again, R4, you look at it, it leads to the multifamily units as well as the church.
Just a point of clarification here, Mr. Pettis, the property that's being zoned, I'm looking at an aerial that admittedly could be outdated. Are the pictures from the house that you're providing us, is that the property that's to the north of the subject property?
No, that is the project, that is the pictures of the current site.
Okay.
We believe.
Not according to the aerial. There's no structure on it, which is why I was confused. Now, the area to the north looks a little bit like the picture that's included on your first picture here that was in the exhibit that you've handed out to the commissioners. So the lot to the south, at least in this aerial, and unfortunately I don't have a date, but is vacant.
So if it will, Mr. Chair, we will ask for a continuance of 2 weeks so we can get with the applicant, because this is our first time having an opportunity to meet the applicant.
Okay, well, before we entertain a continuance, I think we should have a little bit of a discussion here because we already started it. So
Sure.
We owe it to all the parties to sort of give
Sure,
feedback
sure.
and have a discussion. And maybe we ultimately landed a continuance, but I think we should visit about it. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Pettis right now?
Yeah, just a couple. One, where's the church? Just so I'm clear.
Oh, so the church is just where you see the R4 to the straight up to the right-hand side.
That's the church right there?
That is the church. That
Excellent,
is,
okay.
absolutely correct. Now, the use of the land is still, you have a C3 that abuts R4, which a correct use for a C3 property should be along a busy area. So that does not change. The pictures that we did show is from the above property, but the land itself actually should be like the surrounding properties are for. The staff report clearly points out the compatibility issue. Again, you have R4 versus C3. Now, again, it'd be different if the C3 was along Walker or along 59th, but again, you are going in a residential area for C3. Now, it would be different if it was a spud, where the spud can actually say, hey, this is what the use of this property is going to be. Okay, so the applicant mentioned, of course, an automobile shop or something like that, but C3 allows for more than.
Sure, we understand that.
So yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So just so we're clear, your objections, the church's objections, are not to the fact that this could be a commercial use. The objection is to the intensity and the specific commercial uses.
That is absolutely correct.
Cool. That's all, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
wondering if the applicant has a copy of what you passed out. If not, here's an extra for the applicant.
Okay, there were a number of folks who had signed up to speak, and my understanding was that Mr. Pettis was speaking on your behalf. In lieu of going through and reading every name, I'll just ask if there's anybody else who would like to be heard today that has something different feedback they'd like to provide to the commission as it relates to the item today, PC 10766. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard directly? Okay. I just want to make sure. Well, I appreciate everybody coming down and standing and acknowledging, and the commission certainly saw everybody who stood up who was concerned about this item. So Ms. Jimenez, would you mind coming back up for just a second? So before I ask the commission just kind of their thoughts, I want to make a couple points just so you're clear on those, since you're kind of representing the applicant. If we were to recommend a continuance and it related to maybe talking about a SPUD, that would require you to renotice the application, so we'd have to refile. That would take a continuance of a minimum of a month. And so the first meeting where the new case could be heard, JJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be the 18th of November, or would it be December's hearing? We can still do it in November. So that would be November the 18th is the first continuance we could really grant you. If you wanted to take 2 weeks and try to convince the people in opposition that C3 is okay, that's up to you. But I don't know that that's a great plan, because I think it would wind pushing you into December, because we only have one meeting in November and one meeting in December, and I'd hate for you to come back in 2 weeks and then get continued, because it'd be the meeting in December before we could hear it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, other thoughts on this or opinions about what you guys want to do? Should we kick it a month? Do you want to do something different?
I have a question.
Well, my question is, we say this as a SPUD, but does the applicant, know what that involves?
Yep, that's a great question. And I hate to do this, but I would say that at least city staff could give you some direction about how that application could be filed. It may be something that you want to retain some sort of counsel to assist you with at that point. But they can certainly give you the direction of the difference between the applications and what's involved. So,
I'm curious, since the issue's been raised, to know, as you're looking at this picture, is the property that you're here to rezone vacant, or is this what's sitting on it?
It is vacant, as far as I know, it's vacant.
This one here.
They say they don't recognize any of this.
So is this the adjacent property?
Yeah, it is. Does the applicant own the adjacent property as well?
Esta es la que está a un lado de la propiedad. ¿Qué es esto?
Sí, es una casa, pero esa propiedad no es conmigo. Es la siguiente casa.
Yeah, it's adjacent.
The applicant does not own the adjacent property, that's owned by somebody else?
Yeah,
So that's a whole nother problem?
yeah, that's a whole different problem.
But you're wanting to rezone this property to operate a car repair business.
Correct.
so I mean, obviously this is not before us, but I think we've got a pretty obvious zoning violation of the property to the north, but code enforcement issue. But at any rate, anybody have an objection to I think they should take some time and visit both with staff and with the people from the church and get everybody comfortable about where this is headed. If anybody feels differently, this is the time to speak up. Otherwise, I'm going to encourage you to do that.
I think that's a good idea, but I have to say, as is kind of become our custom in giving applicants a little bit of direction, this is not a place at which I see a car repair business or really any kind of intense commercial use of any kind. I mean, it is absolutely a residential property as it is zoned, it seems like to me. Yes, it abuts commercial property to the south, but that commercial property fronts onto Southwest 59th. And so, I think this piece of property, especially given that its only access is on this neighborhood street and so forth, I'm all in favor of people having time to talk and think and reconsider. But for me, I don't see this property being zoned commercially. So just that little bit of guidance from one person on the horseshoe.
Yeah, I have mixed emotions about it just because it is at the back of a very large commercial development. It's a small piece. It's unlikely to be developed as multifamily, unlike the property to the east, which is zoned R4, which is substantially larger. I mean, I don't know that you could get me there on an auto repair business because there's a lot of compatibility problems that would have to be worked through, and that's why I would advise you to seek some outside counsel to kind of help you think through some of those challenges. But I'll never say never. I'll say I think it's an uphill battle for you. That would be my take on it. Anybody else feel differently or want to share comments?
I would agree with both of you, especially Commissioner Powers, and I would ask if to the west that looks like a nursing home or assisted
Yes.
living, that would reiterate, this is residential and nursing home right behind this lot, it looks like.
Yep. Okay. Are you agreeable to a continuance until November the 18th? And that gives you guys some time. It does give you time, it doesn't give you a lot of time. So I would encourage you to get with staff pretty quickly and get some direction, and then maybe try to have council advise you from there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no further discussion on this. In Commissioner Privett's absence, I'll take a motion to continue this case to November the 18th.
So move.
I have a motion, and I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now all votes should be cast.
Mine shows I voted,
Yeah.
so I vote yay.
Okay. And PC 10766 has been continued to November the 18th. Thanks, everybody, for coming down and joining us today. Next item on the agenda today is item 13, which has been continued. That's PC 10768. So our next case item to be heard is PC 10769, item 14. Commissioner Highsmith, I believe you're recusing yourself from this item? Okay.
Did we actually continue? I don't think we continued.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't think we actually.
I'm so sorry. You're right. You're right. My apologies. My apologies. Sorry. 10768. Is the applicant present? Yes, we're here. Sorry. Please come forward. My apologies.
Not a problem, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here representing Mr. Juan Carapia, who is also sitting in here. He is actually the owner, investor of this property, and his goal is to request a rezoning to go from R1 to C3 for the future potential development of a venue for social events and gatherings at this zone that you might be seeing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Commissioner Powers, this is your ward, ma'am. Do you have questions or comments for the applicant?
Well, I did speak to Mr. Carapia this morning about the possibility of taking a continuance on this item. His intended use for the property is a banquet hall, or that sounds a lot like event center. And so a straight C3 zoning on this, I'm not sure is the way I would like to see it go. This is a little bit difficult if it were brought in as a straight request. You know, I suppose it might be tempting, but knowing that that's a use that he'd like to make of it, I would like to at least sit down with him, see his plans, talk to him about the possibility of bringing us this application as an SPUD so that we could talk about possible controls. There's a substantial residential area directly to the west and so forth and northwest. So I just think, you know, given our background and history with event centers, that would be a good use of a couple of weeks to sit down and talk about it.
For the purposes of clarification, I do believe that, and Mr. Chambliss, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but recreation, sports and recreation, entertainment, outdoor restricted is allowed by right in C3, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the issue that's the concern you have, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an objection to taking a continuance to speak with Commissioner Powers about that?
No, we don't have any objection. On the other hand, we would like to, you know, sit down and review with you so that you can properly guide us on this process.
I'd love to do that.
Okay.
You should have my phone number because I called you this morning. If not, ask staff and they'll be glad to give it to them. Give them my cell number. So be glad to do that.
Okay. Do we need to, I'm assuming prior meeting you, turn in some plans and some documents? And
Let's sit down together and look at what you've got.
Okay.
I mean, if you can email them to me, that'd be great, but we can look at them together.
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you.
I'm a little torn about when we should continue this to, if the ultimate objective is going to be to steer toward, I'm assuming this would be an SPUD.
Yes.
I didn't check the size, but so if that were true, we would need at least a month.
I thought well, let's take 2 weeks and give them a chance to think about it. I
Okay.
don't want to decide for them.
Okay. 1028 agreeable to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If there's no further discussion on this, I will take a motion, Commissioner Powers, to continue this case to October the 28th.
I move we can continue item number 13, PC 10768, until November, I'm sorry, what? No, October
October 28th.
28th.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. All votes should be cast. Janice.
Oh, sorry.
And that item has been continued. Thank you guys for coming down. We
Thank you,
appreciate it.
sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Now we're going to hear item 14, and Commissioner Highsmith, you are recusing yourself. So we'll give him just a moment to depart. and then we
Item
can-
14, is case PC 10769, application by Double Blue Run to rezone 2601 South Sarah from the AA district to the C3 district.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant, Clay Farha, who is here with us. This is an application for a C3 zoning district. This is made possible because of the new turnpike, the way that it cuts through there. It now creates a commercial corner with full access, both an on-ramp and an off-ramp there at the Kilpatrick Turnpike. So we believe that based upon the changing nature of this area, the commercial development will be successful here and makes sense based upon the proximity of the turnpike. Staff recommends approval. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. This is Commissioner Coffey's ward. She's not with us today. Other commissioners have questions or thoughts on this one? I would just note for everybody's, sort of thought on this item, the staff report does indicate there's a very large barrier between, natural barrier between this property and the residential that would be to the west. So just kind of FYI, that was notated in the staff report.
Yeah, and it's heavily treed, and that's outside of our legal description, so that'll certainly serve as a nice buffer between the commercial and the residential.
Right. Commissioners have questions for the applicant? Okay. I don't have anybody sign up to speak. Is there anybody who wants to be heard on PC 10769? Okay. Seeing nobody, if there's no further discussion, I'd take a motion from somebody on something.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of PC 10769.
Okay. I have a motion, and I'll take the second on PrimeGov to recommend approval to City Council on PC 10769. There are no TEs. Please cast your votes when available. It's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. All votes should be cast, and that item is recommended for approval. Thank you. Next item on the agenda today is item 15. Mr. Chambliss?
Item 15 is SPUD 1347. It's an application by United Investments to rezone 2424 North Sarah Road from SPUD 650 to SPUD 1347.
Good afternoon, Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road. On behalf of the applicant, what you have before you today is a light industrial SPUD with limited uses, approximately 2 acres at the northeast corner of 23rd and Sarah Road. I have briefly spoke with staff and Commissioner Clare regarding the TEs and would like to discuss those. We are in agreement with TEs 1, 2, and 5 as stated. On TE 3, would like to clarify that no overhead doors shall face north or east on buildings directly adjacent to the residential zoning to the north and east.
Oh, and your concern on that is the bottom row of buildings that's going to face to the
Correct.
north? Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay.
TE4, the request was to eliminate convenience sales and personal services, and I would just like to change that to eliminate that within 150 feet of the residential zoning.
Would that impact just the 2 buildings to the east?
That would impact the 3 buildings on the north and east, and so the 3 buildings, possibly the 2 buildings at the southwest corner would be able to.
Got it. It would just
house those.
allow a building essentially or 2 there in the southwest to be able to occupy that use. Okay. But within 150 feet of residential. Okay.
Correct. TE5 we agreed to, and on TE6, this is the standard facade comment, and we would like to modify it stating that the building elevations directly adjacent to and abutting the residential, we agree with that statement, requiring those facade requirements. But on the building elevations directly and adjacent to abutting those. So the back walls of anything that's abutting that residential would meet that 70% minimum requirement of stone and masonry. And then the remainder of that, so building elevations not abutting or directly adjacent to, we would like to allow for the metal to be permitted with a minimum of a wainscot. And I would like that to read, exterior building wall finish in all structures, exclusive of windows and doors, shall consist of exposed metal, brick, rock, stone, masonry, including precast concrete and tilt slab construction, dry-vit stucco, wood, or other similar type finish. Buildings shall contain a minimum of a wainscot of brick, rock, or stone masonry, and buildings shall not be composed of more than 70% exposed metal, dry-vit stucco, wood, or other similar type finish. So basically that is to make sure that anything abutting that residential facade does meet the standard facade requirement, but to allow the uppers of the remaining facades to be metal with a wainscot or some other.
And the way you drafted that language, the wainscoting would have to be 30%.
Correct.
Of the building.
So if it's a 10-foot wall, then it'd be 3 foot up on the wall. 7 foot would be permitted to be the metal.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm clear on that. Okay, any questions for the applicant on this? This is, I'm pretty sure, Ward 3 as well. I turned my page too quick.
No, this is Ward 1.
Ward 1.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, well, good, Commissioner Claire.
Yeah.
Why don't you lead our discussion?
So, no, I talked with Mr. Grubbs earlier today, and I'm in agreement with our discussion and what he just summarized for the commission, and so I'm in support of the application. So.
Okay. I have one question for staff, and this is just purely a curiosity question from my standpoint. I was not familiar with the use unit 8150.2, agricultural processing limited, just from a definitional perspective, but it's the packing or processing of crops grown on the premises by the processor. So is that essentially the use unit people are using for marijuana grow facility? Is that what that use unit? Okay. Okay. I mean, it doesn't, I just was curious. That doesn't change anything for me. Just curious if that's what that is. And then there's some clarifying language in some of the other use units. Commissioner Claire, you read that, or comfortable with the way that language is prepared? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Other commissioners have questions or comments on this?
Yeah, just some comments, and I'm curious to see how the rest of the commission feels. Obviously, we get in this situation where these are residences that have not been constructed. So I'm assuming, Mark, that this commercial development is going to happen after the houses have been built.
They're ready to move forward with it. I don't know the timing of those abutting houses. I know it's currently under construction. I just don't know the ones that are directly adjacent to, if they are under construction currently. But I know that there is construction of housing going on within that now.
Have they been sold already?
I believe it's in a market that's selling as fast as you put them on the ground.
So see, then these use units give me pause. I guess the automotive, all the automotive uses give me pause. The agriculture uses give me pause, being right next to there. And I would have thought it'd be one thing if this was done first and then the houses were built, because then everybody's on notice. I have a fear of this situation where these things come up, these things get built after the fact, and people tell us their realtor told them that this was always going to stay an empty lot. You know, it's the classic problem. So I'm just trying to get ahead of that now. If you all are, if there's consensus among the commission that those uses is not a big deal to have a car wash behind you or whatever, and I'm off base, then I concede it. But that would worry me if I pre-bought this property, didn't know that there was going to be a car wash and a car dealership behind me, or a laundromat, or, you know, those things worry me. But I'm curious to hear how everyone else feels.
I will say the automotive use units don't bother me at all because of the way they're limited. I mean, the one that you make a good point on would be cleaning and repairs. The auto dealerships and malls they prohibit outdoor display. And then the automotive equipment and storage prohibits outdoor storage. So those are very narrowly tailored to allow for what I would say would be more compatible with residential. The other use units that we have, Mr. Grubbs is limited, by way of example, convenience sales and services to 150 feet. There's nothing in here. I looked for the standard, issues in terms of restaurants with, drive-through. But I mean, really, this is a light industrial park is what it is. So everything's confined indoors. I don't know. Does anybody have thoughts or other opinions on that?
Well, I mean, I guess I do have sort of just a generalized concern about that when we put what are basically commercial uses right up against residential uses. There are issues. I mean, that's just a fact. And I get what you're saying entirely about people who are buying those lots and, spending all the time with the architect for their dream home just to find out that there's a laundromat behind them or whatever. That it is kind of problematic. The other issue that I have about this application is, that when we developed these policies with respect to facades and the exposed metal surfaces on buildings, it wasn't just to buffer those against existing residential. It was really a visual aesthetic thing, and their visibility from the street is just as concerning to me as their visibility from neighboring residential uses. And frankly, the kind of very patchwork, these buildings, yes, and the back of these, but not those, it doesn't give me a good feeling about this development, just in general. So I don't like that. I think you should come up with I think you should meet the architectural requirements, I guess what I'm really saying.
I would agree with you in almost every instance except for the fact of PUD 173, which is across the street. It's a massive personal storage facility. It's really RV storage is what it is.
It's actually, and I'll just confess right up front, it was a huge fail on our part. We spent a lot of time talking about that when it came through and trying to design it so that there wouldn't be metal visible from anywhere. But of course, it's right on the curve of the highway,
Yeah.
and so it's visible from everywhere.
It's a smashing financial success, from
I'm
what
sure
I
it
understand.
is. I'm sure it is.
So lots of property taxes generated as a result of that. I just think that aids the argument of compatibility for what might be there, and it puts the neighbors on. I mean, the neighbors are already looking at that because that's been built and constructed there for, it's been there quite a while.
Yeah, it has.
I'm not terribly troubled by it. I guess the one thing, if we're going to pick on it and we really want to protect the residential and be tough on the applicant, would be, staff's recommended a TE of a 10-foot green belt, with 25-foot centers. We could try to beef that up a little bit just to provide some buffer. But the language that Mr. Grubbs read in, that's, above and beyond what you normally see in these types of complexes. So I don't know. I don't have a real issue with it. I don't know where we are as a group, but
Could we increase the landscaping a little bit in the green belt?
I'm sorry?
Could we increase the landscaping a little bit in the green belt from every 25 feet or trees on 25-foot centers down to, 20? Would that be good? 15?
I'm in agreement with that.
okay. Any other comments on this? I still haven't asked anybody who wants to be heard, so I hope nobody's out there panicked that we're getting ready to vote on this without listening to you.
No one looks panicked.
Is there anybody here that wants to be heard on SPUD 1347? Okay, just making sure. Commissioner Claire, if there's no further discussion, I did try to take some notes on Mr. Grubbs' comments, but I think you've got them based on your discussion with him earlier, so I'll let you try to make the motion if you'd like to make it, sir.
Yeah. Make a motion to recommend approval of SPUD 1347 with the amended TEs as read into the record by the applicant, as well as amending TE2 to read 10-foot green belt should be provided along the north and east consisting of 9 points of landscaping for every 25 feet or trees, I'm going to say canopy trees, on 20-foot centers.
Okay. And out of an abundance of caution, I'll just say TE3 was amended to read, "No overhead doors shall face north or east adjacent to residential." Is that correct, Mr. Grubbs?
Correct.
TE4 was amended to read, "Convenience sales and services shall not be allowed within 150 feet of residential use." Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you read in a paragraph of language to amend TE6.
And I have it typed up, and I will provide it to staff.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that because it was read into the record earlier. So if that's all, I'll take the second on PrimeGov, which has been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. So please cast your votes on recommending approval to City Council of 1347. All votes should be cast, and that item is recommended for approval. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item number 16. Mr. Chambliss.
Item 16 is SPUD 1349. It's an application by TFP LLC to rezone 8101 North I-35 Service Road from C3 to SPUD 1349.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a application to allow for completely controlled personal storage, and it'll be completely contained. If you could go to the site plan, Cindy. As you can see, it'll be completely contained in the inside of the building, very little parking outside, no outside doors opening, no outside garage doors, and taking access from the service road and exiting back onto the service road as well as onto 82nd Street. Staff did forward us a protestant. It's for the property that is adjacent to the red roofed house to the west. I'll just note for the record that if we had an aerial that you could look at, there's a very, very large 400,000 or 500,000 square foot warehouse that's constructed immediately north of this property. And they did retain the trees that are in the right-of-way of 82nd Street, but the rest of that site got denuded, and the west end was lowered about 20 feet to make the north end, or the east end, stand about 20 feet above our property. So it's literally sits up in the air. It's a tilt-up concrete building, and as you can see, the warehouse uses up and down I-35 have expanded as far west as Bryant, and on the other side, about a half a mile in width as you parallel the highway. So this is obviously a light industrial use in this area. The staff did have one TE that, if I understand correctly, is they wanted a 20-foot buffer on the west side. We are actually purchasing this property from the gentleman that owns the red roof house, and he does not have a problem with our 10-foot setback and 5-foot landscape buffer. And he actually lives there. So we'd like to leave it where we have it because it's a very tight site. You can't see it on this drawing, but the east of the northeast corner of the building, on the north building, is a water and a sewer line easement, which is about 25 foot wide. So we can't shove the building any further to the east. And we need the bays to be even as they're dimensioned on this to fit the building type. So we'd ask for that TE to be removed.
Got it. Just really, I mean, mending it, I guess. Specify be 10 feet within a 5-foot landscape buffer.
We'd be fine with that.
Okay. This is Commissioner Pennington's ward, so I'll let you lead our discussion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did meet with Tim and Mark about this. Just so we're clear, Tim, you're buying all the property to the west of the northern building, is that correct? Or just the one?
So the development team has teamed up and partnered with that property owner. So he's part of the deal.
Gotcha.
We are only rezoning this piece as part of the deal. So he'll remain an owner of that other piece to the west.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, due to that, that handles a lot of my objections. I was concerned about the residential right next to it. Tim's right that that's consistent with, the warehouses are pretty consistent with all the other development you see along I-35 around that corridor. So really, I just want to hear from any neighbors who are kind of far away from it and hear what their concerns are and see if we can't mitigate them.
Okay, well, let's ask. Is there anybody here that wants to be heard on SPUD 1349? Please come forward, ma'am.
My name's Lou Coleman. I'm at 8100 North Bryant. I am representing not only myself as an adjacent landowner, because that far west side actually abuts my property, and nobody's buying it from me. I am also representing the other adjacent property owners, plus property owners across Bryant. And I'll just go right ahead and jump in. First off, I talked to Inky Johnson this morning. That's the man that lives in the red roofed house, and he did not indicate he planned to sell this property to these people. I don't know where that comes from, but I talked to him about 3 hours ago, and that was not what he said. So I'll start with that.
It's particular, be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so short, I never can get.
It's totally fine.
Normally I need a box, so. All right, so as I say, I just talked to Inky Johnson. I don't know where that came from, because that is not what he told me. I would also say that most of that west line there abuts my property. As I say, nobody's selling that. This has been residential since my family settled it in 1889 with the land run. And we have lived on it continuously ever since. And all that, this is a little bit old, all that property to the immediate west of Bryant is now being developed as very high-end homes, and they are very unhappy at this. Basically, this is a compatibility issue. Let me address the warehouse. Yes, there's a big old warehouse over there. There's also a 25-foot greenbelt, which actually does hide the warehouse from the property adjacent to 82nd, interestingly enough. And what we have discovered is that warehouses, you'll notice everything faces north, nothing faces anywhere near us, and nothing faces adjacent property owners farther down the way. Those warehouses are actually pretty good neighbors. They are quiet. There isn't a lot of coming and going that you can tell. They have set daytime hours. They're not open on weekends. As highway property goes, you know, that's one thing. A personal storage unit, even enclosed, is a completely different matter. And I will say that the City Council has recognized this. That property there at the corner of Wilshire and Bryant, going down to the service road, is actually PUD 1083. And when PUD 1083 was approved by the City Council, they specifically prohibited use of personal storage units for that PUD 1083. There is it's a residential use, but there's also a commercial business on it. It's a commercial business, again, that has no customers coming in. So it really doesn't seem like a commercial business at all. And the City Council specifically said, personal storage units are not appropriate for this area because, yes, it's highway frontage on that side. But the rest of it is residential. And you drive down Bryant, it is all residential. And we have been trying to explain to the city for years that this is a neighborhood and we know each other and we take care of each other. And we don't need a personal storage unit there because personal storage units, even fully enclosed ones, have significant problems. There are problems with crime, there are problems with traffic, there are problems with ingress and egress. And I'm speaking for every single one of them up there, firmly object to this. I will point out something else. They can't use 82nd. There's no ingress or egress from 82nd because 82nd actually is owned by the people that own that warehouse, and PUD 771 explicitly restricts the use of 82nd. It is an unimproved gravel road to be maintained by those owners. That's a whole different story. To be maintained by those owners with no access to commercial development along 82nd and no use of trucks. That's in that PUD, and you know it is because I put it there, and they agreed to it. They didn't really want that street. It just happened to show up in the survey. So these people can't use 82nd. They probably didn't realize that. But it's a less attractive property than they think it is. If the council were to approve this, the only way the neighborhood believes that the community could be safe and our property values even remotely procured, because we are worried about these property values. If Inky gets persuaded to sell, it'll be because he thinks that this is going to disturb his property values because he's the house there. But if you look close, there's houses all along that. There's 4 different landowners adjacent to that. And we're all worried about our property values if this goes in. This is not like a warehouse. This is completely different. And what we would ask for first is a 25-foot green belt, which is what we have on the other side of 82nd from that PUD 771, with existing trees or planting as necessary. So I say that's consistent with that, even though it would require a redesign of their buildings. We also want a 10-foot solid noise-deadening wall, the kind that you see between highways and commercial property and residential neighborhood, because we are very worried about our quality of life if this goes in. Currently, they're planning their design proposal.
Ms. Coleman, I'm going to give you 60 more seconds, just out of respect.
Currently, their
but go ahead.
design proposal says buildings right up to the edge can count as a wall. No, we want that high wall. We also want the interdirected sight lighting, no metal buildings. It's unsuitable for the neighborhood. None of those warehouses he's so happy to look at are metal. That's not a suitable thing for that. And finally, essentially to maintain our safety in the community and keep crime down, we want a 24/7 security guard on the property at all times. Those would be the things that we would ask for if this were to be approved. But as I say, we are opposed to the entire idea. The city council has already said this is not appropriate for this kind of neighborhood, that in particular, and that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman, very much for being with us.
Can I ask a question of Ms. Coleman?
Yeah, before you
Ms. Coleman, would you mind answering a few questions?
I didn't know I was allowed to do that, absolutely.
Go ahead, Commissioner Powers.
I want to be really clear about where it is you live.
Okay. So, yeah, OKC, yeah, a little bit farther south, sort of right around there. And I have about 8 acres there. It goes from Bryant, OKC, R1, that whole thing that's R1, that little house, thing there, that's mine, and I own probably about half that lot going all the way down past, all the way down about to where their line is. There's a woods down there, and I own the woods.
So you take access out on to Bryant.
Bryant is our only access. The other 4 landowners in question, their only access is 82nd.
And they take access, do they have to go west? Is it improved enough to go east?
It would be if the owners would maintain it.
So how do they take access now? Do they take
Normally they can go east or west on 82nd.
Okay.
At the moment, they're going east, they're going west because it's pretty rutted down there at the east, but normally they can do both. And
Okay.
Inky, there at the bottom, normally goes east just because he's closest to the service road there.
The service road there is two-way as well.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Pennington.
First question, so the only issue is because it's personal storage. If this proposal was a warehouse, then we'd only be dealing with the landscape buffer and the wall. Is that all? Or it's just because of the personal storage?
We are aware that this is going to be developed at some point somehow. I feel real sorry for the veterinarian who originally owned it because he thought this was going to be snapped up as property, but as you see, it's a real inconvenient shape. And I'm sorry about that, but that is what it is. We are aware it is going to be developed at some point. There are absolutely uses we can live with, and we live in the real world. We are not trying to say no one ever gets to build on it. This is particularly not an appropriate use given that neighborhood. The compatibility is what this is all about. These are people who have houses and land, and like I said, those high-end houses over there are pretty unhappy about the thought that their property value is suddenly going to be affected by a personal storage unit. So yes, it's not that we don't want anything on it. We don't want this on it.
You don't want personal storage?
We don't want this
That
personal
use
storage
unit.
unit.
Okay, and so just so I'm clear, assuming this proposal moved forward with the use unit of personal storage, you want a 25-foot landscape buffer to the west, you want a 10-foot wall to the west, no metal facades, and 24/7 security, which I don't think we can stipulate.
I know, but I'm just telling you, 24/7 security,
We can.
directed lighting as well.
And the directed lighting.
Directed lighting is a part of the code.
Yeah.
I know it is, but I'm putting it in there anyway because in an abundance of caution. Yeah.
Okay, I think that helps. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on SPUD 1349? Okay.
I had a question of Mr. Johnson. On my staff report map, it looks to me like the gentleman who is most directly west of you, the one who may or may not have sold you his property.
He signed the authorization.
There's a strip of land that drops down along your western boundary that he's going to retain ownership of. Is that right?
I don't think so. Sorry. I think there's been some lot splits done in there, and so all we have is a survey of our tract.
Okay.
We didn't.
So you don't know
I
whether
don't
that's,
know.
okay.
I would assume that what she testified is accurate, and so our building adjacent to her property, which would be the south building on the west side, is some 40 feet from the property line, so we could agree to a buffer there, and we have to have a fence. The corner of our building will drop approximately 6 feet in that corner to bring it down so that we can level it out. And these buildings, they won't have any outdoor opening doors like the truck docks that are on the warehouse to the north, although their doors are north. The back side is just a solid white wall with some manways out. So we'll have, 2 doors, one in and one out, and the site will be completely secured, and nobody can get into these buildings without a key card, a code. I wasn't aware that 82nd Street was private, so we can eliminate the drive onto 82nd Street. It does not show up on our survey as private, so, but we can change that and eliminate that access onto 82nd Street. But at the end of the day, this building's not going to look any different to the one to the north, except for it'll be smaller and about half as high. That's about a 38-foot high building to the north.
How would that work, Tim, if you eliminate the access to northeast 82nd Street?
Where the angle to the right, to the east goes, we'll reconfigure those units and have the drive inside turn and go out to the east.
Oh, I see. So it will just come out the building and exit back onto the service road?
Right.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
I think a 10-foot wall is excessive.
I think that's extremely excessive. That's my opinion. I also think it's, with all due respect to Ms. Coleman, it's not true that personal storage is more offensive. It is way less offensive than an industrial user is as it relates to infringement on residential. We have neighborhoods all through this community, all through Oklahoma City, all through the surrounding metro where personal storage abuts residential. It's built all the time that way. There are truly, to say dozens probably undersells it, of neighborhoods that have adjoining personal storage. It's frankly a more accommodating neighbor than most people realize because the traffic is more minimal than people think. And the fact that this is fully enclosed makes it no different in my view. I was listening for anything that I felt like would be appropriate to try to address, the aesthetic of the building. Okay, maybe I don't think metal is in your architectural regulation, is it? Exposed metal or concrete buildings shall not be permitted. So we don't have metal or concrete. These are traditional building materials: brick, rock, concrete board, stone masonry, EIFS stucco, wood, and architectural metal shall be permitted. As we know, architectural metal is not the exposed metal we try to prevent. So I don't know if anybody has a real aversion to that. I don't. Commissioner Pennington, do you have thoughts or feel differently than what I'm?
No, I think I agree. I think it already requires a 6 to 8 foot fence. You want to go to 8?
We can.
Would you mind going to 8? And
Along the
then-
west property line?
Yeah, along the west property line. And then you said you can accommodate the 25-foot landscape buffer?
I think we can. Again, it's excessive. I think 10 foot would be per the code. Or actually, I don't know, Mark, isn't it 5 feet? Yeah. We'd go 10 feet with a landscape buffer. I mean, it's, like I said, we're lowering that side on our side, so the landscaping will only benefit our side of the fence.
Yep.
We'll be 6 feet lower and a 6-foot fence on top.
And then there's no access to 82nd.
Correct.
I mean, we're talking about, so we've already got you got the buffer, you've got the fence, you've got the facade. No, please, you'd have to come to the mic. Just so we're clear.
I also, I mean, I just want to point out one other thing too, that's, it's in the staff report, it's obvious, but the property is currently zoned C3 and it is currently zoned C4.
Oh.
Yeah. Half and half, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got two commercial zoning units there, C3 and C4, okay.
It's on half and half. I appreciate the 8-foot fence, I appreciate the buffer, although as I say, that 25-foot buffer is, we think, appropriate given the buffer on the other side. 10 foot isn't very long if you are looking at trees. I would just say I am still going to shake, I appreciate all those. If you're going to approve it, that would be the very least we would ask. But you're still missing the point, which is that it is, with all due respect, Mr. Cravens, an inappropriate use of this particular plot of land in that particular place. And the fact that the city council decided once not to put personal storage units on there certainly carries some weight with me, and I would think it might be something that would carry some weight with you. Nothing else has changed over there.
Well, except for the giant industrial building that's built north of it.
No, that was there at the time.
And it's going to go back to them, so.
There's a difference between this piece of land and the piece of land that PUD 1083 sits on,
Yeah.
which fronts on Bryan and Wilshire. I mean, I think the impact of that piece of property on the neighborhood to the west of Bryant is very different than the impact of this property.
Yeah, this property basically fronts I-35, which is our most major interstate north and south in all of Oklahoma City.
Oh, well, we're well aware.
It's going to be developed like this. That's my point. This is ultimately what is going to happen along I-35. That's why there's a large industrial facility to the north. That's why you have all the industrial to the east that's been developed with Ditch Witch and with Vermeer and all that.
Exactly, and that's an excellent point. And to me, goes to my point, which is you say it's going to develop like this, and my point is no, it is not. If you look at that mile up I-35, up and down both sides, that particular mile between Wilshire and Britton has not got anything like this on it. It has Ditch Witch, which is a particular kind of structure. It has, and something like Ditch Witch, I don't think we'd be complaining about quite as hard as we are about this, because in our view, that is actually a different animal. And yes, there are more difficulties with crime and personal crime in things like storage units than there are in places like Ditch Witch or the warehouses. You got a march of warehouses and a couple of things like Ditch Witch up there. It is not being developed like this, and that is our point.
Got it. Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners on this? I think we've reached a point where we need to figure out where we are.
Well, with C4 and C3 there, I mean, what could you put in C4 without coming before us at all?
Right.
Everything.
Everything.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, we could build this there today.
I understand. That's the point
Yeah.
I'm making for the benefit of the commission, is that this,
We are only here because of the setbacks, because of the oddity of the site.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the point I was trying to make. So,
Yep. I'm ready to make a motion unless there's further comment.
let's have it.
I move that we recommend approval of SPUD 1349 with the following additional technical evaluations require a 10-foot landscape buffer to the west, require an 8-foot minimum fence height, and eliminate access to northeast 82nd Street.
The fence also along the west.
And excuse me, that the fence, that additional TE, sorry, that the 8-foot fence be placed on the west side.
And wrong time to bring this up since you're making a motion, but we're gonna let 3 drives? Because he said he was gonna turn the exit out the east end of that thing, and so that puts 3 drives out onto that.
That's a good point.
That third drive is going to be
Is it gonna meet the 200
extreme
feet?
distance away from at least the 2 drives to the south. 82nd Street, it would not be, but you've got to have 200 feet there, right?
Exactly. We can get the 200-foot minimum spacing.
You're good with
And we
it.
can agree to that.
Okay. Are we clear on, is everybody clear on the motion that was made? Just, I think the record's clear, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear. Okay. If that's true, then I'll take a second on the motion to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1349, subject to the amended and added technical evaluations. It's been seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes. And this item is recommended for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda today is be PUD 1849, item number 17.
Item 17, 1849 is a request to rezone 1721 Northeast 23rd Street from the C4 district to the PUD 1849 district.
Good afternoon again. Tim Johnson on behalf of the applicant. As you probably know, this is a piece of property. It's zoned C4 now. It's right across the street from what is now the famous East Point development. Received a national honor earlier in this week from the ULI. But this is a piece of property that we're amending the zoning, getting rid of several uses, and adding the transient accommodation use. We have some setbacks and some heights that we've added in the PUD. This size of the site is such that it could be an SPUD, but we filed it specifically as a PUD and have agreed to come back to the Planning Commission with a site plan approval. That's because we cannot reveal the building size dimensions at this point in time. There are negotiations going on with regard to this property. So we agree with the staff's technical evaluations, if I can find them. There are 2, and we agree with both of them. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Pennington, this is your ward. Do you have questions or comments for the applicant?
I met with Tim about it. I think it's a good idea. I made it very clear to Tim. I have concerns about the building height. I think that's going to be an issue when we come back to specific plans. So I hope that you've told the property owners that that's going to be a big issue.
The building height?
So the building height.
If that is a concern of yours, Commissioner Pennington, you get ready to craft a motion, you'll need to specifically request our ability to review the height of the building at specific plan states. Otherwise, if it's allowed by the zoning, we wouldn't have the authority to do it.
Okay.
We understand.
Other than that, I have no objections.
I had 2 things that I didn't catch, and I did have a call, I believe, with Mark Zitzow and you on this. The commercial lodging piece of it is a concern for me because of the proposed height. And then the other thing that I just think was left out on accident was just the 50-foot dumpster requirement. That may be a logistical challenge because of the way the site's set up. But I just wanted to mention that and see if it were possible or how far we could get it. I know 25 is the code, but.
And I think in this case, what it'll be enclosed. It'll probably be enclosed as part of the building.
Oh, the dumpster would be? And okay.
But we're doing a similar thing on Thrive down here on 10th.
Could we somehow, I guess we could just reserve the right to review that too, dumpster location?
We can do it that way.
Any objection to the deletion of commercial lodging as a use unit?
I guess I have a question about.
You disagree, Commissioner Powers? Or no? Yeah, okay.
I'm looking for the use unit. Give me a second.
It's 8300.51.
We.
You got that one.
Yeah, got it.
Where'd Mark
That Spectator Sport Outdoor, I watch that, I mean, I'm all over
So I'll
that.
ask JJ, what is that different from transient accommodations?
It's the same thing.
I mean,
The new name.
so it is an important use as part of this project.
Okay.
I mean, we can review the height. If that's the real issue with that use, is it?
It's the, I refer to it as the Turtle Creek problem. If you drive up along the Kilpatrick Turnpike at MacArthur and Memorial, to the west, there are 2 hotels that were built that back up to the Turtle Creek neighborhood. These are 3- and 4-story hotels, as I recall, and they are immediately adjacent, so they hover over the residential property. There are instances where people come in and they say, well, I don't want that 2-story window looking in my backyard, and I think that's silly. I do feel differently when it comes to hotels.
Yeah.
That was a bad outcome for those folks. And so I try to be really sensitive about that when you're going to put something that's going to, peer down in, and you do have transient traffic coming and going, looking in people's backyards. I understand the concern with that. So there's got to be a way to design around it, but I'm trying to articulate that would be a big concern for me that I would hope we would reserve the right to review is maybe, we need to be careful about how we craft that language, Ms. Randall.
Wouldn't that also then be a height issue?
It's a height issue. I would think you could design around that, right? Like with limits on windows or things like that in the back. But I don't know that, but that's just a concern for me because that's a big, 60 feet is a big building.
Right. And I think we would like to have that part of the site plan review to address any concerns for that northern and western face of the building.
Can we do that? Is say we reserve the right to review just
Yes.
based on the use unit alone? Okay.
We could reserve the right to review the site plan for changes relating to allowing commercial lodging.
Okay.
I would think. I'll defer to you. Are you comfortable with that? I mean, we can work on that language a little bit, but that's something I think we should reserve the right to review that since we're not getting any kind of site plan today.
I'm good with that.
Any other comments before I ask if there's somebody who wants to be heard? No? Okay. Is there anybody here that wants to be heard today on PUD 1849? Okay. If there's none, if we want to try to work through some language, I think, so if you've got specific concerns, Commissioner Pennington, on the height, we would want the right to specifically review the height of any structure at the specific plan stage. We would want the right to review window locations and other compatibility issues created by use unit 8300.51, which is commercial lodging. We want to review the specific location for any dumpster enclosure at specific plan. We want to reserve that right. Other things that concern you?
Nope. Okay. Those are the 3 biggest deals to me. So I move we recommend approval of PUD 1849 with the following technical evaluations. Number 1, that we reserve the right to review at the specific plan stage the compatibility issues and window placement, building height with regard to use unit 8300.51. TE2, that we reserve the right to review the building height just generally at specific plan stage. And TE3, that we reserve the right to review at specific plan the placement of dumpsters.
We agree with all those TEs.
Okay. I have a motion to recommend approval to City Council on PUD 1849, subject to the technical evaluations as read by Commissioner Pennington. It's been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. Please cast your votes when available. All votes should be cast.
Thank you.
And that application is recommended for approval. Thank you. Our next 2 items on the agenda today, 18 and 19, have been continued. Okay. Just for clarification or clarity in case somebody's here, SPUD 1336, item 18, was deferred to October 28th, and SPUD 1340 was deferred to November 18th, which brings us to item number 20. Mr. Chambliss?
Item 20, case SPUD 1341, application by Dow McCarthy to rezone 3108 East Hefner Road from R1 to SPUD 1341.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. This is an application that's been continued a couple times to allow us to meet with our neighbor, Dr. Vaughn, who is here. At the reason for the continuance were to work on just some mitigation TEs that I think would appease Dr. Vaughn and allow our client to continue operating what is a bed and breakfast. As a reminder, a Airbnb home sharing permit was issued a year ago on this property. At the time of renewal, it was denied, suggesting an SPUD was needed to continue operating. Our client does live within the home. So we agree with the 2 TEs that staff listed, but I do have a few more that I'm going to read into the record. So we agree with TE1, which is the minimum lot size per the base zone. We agree with TE2, a 150-foot setback from the southern boundary. We are seeking to add a third TE, that a 10-foot cedar fence with galvanized posts and a capped top shall be required along the east property line to the existing tree canopy to the south. We will show that on our master development plan to note where that fence would be located. TE4, a minimum 10-foot landscape buffer would be required along the western property line where 10 feet is not possible, where the parking encroaches within that. That would require us to put a 10-foot masonry wall along that section of the property line. And then TE 6 would be prohibit the allowance for any outdoor amplified music. I think I skipped TE 5, my apologies. There's a stairwell on the eastern portion of the existing building. We are requiring that to be screened architecturally that fits within the architecture of the house. So I think with that, I believe Dr. Vaughn is in agreement. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Pennington, this is your ward, sir, so I will let you take it over.
First off, does Mr. Box get jealous that you all have been the only ones talking to us today? How does that work when he's usually like the guy who talks to us out the whole time? As long as Dr. Vaughn's good, then I'm good. So I think these all sound appropriate. So as long as it completely says everything that we've exchanged several emails, et cetera. So if he's good, I'm good.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Was there a 3 TE number 3 that specify healthy trees will preserve in the rear and side setbacks to the maximum extent possible?
We agree to that. I don't, on my staff
Commissioner Claire,
report,
when he
there's
was
only
reading
2.
it, he said TE3, he meant TE4.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the confusion, I
Okay.
think. Yeah, I followed it, you're fine. Can I make one suggestion on TE6?
Yes.
Please.
The prohibition of amplified music is great. I think in order for our ordinance to be effective for enforcement at some point down the road, given the nature of the agreement, it would be wise for us to include a decibel limit, just because that's the only mechanism we have to provide a control or enforcement, which would be, and residential would be 55. That's the decibel limit specified by the code. Otherwise, the only thing that they would have to enforce is whether or not there's amplification going on. I don't know what they're going to do there. So,
Works for me.
okay, any objection to that?
No, sir.
Okay.
You said 55?
Mm-hmm. Per the code, that's the residential decibel limit. So, anyway, that's all I got. Anybody, Dr. Vaughn, do you have other comments you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all, I guess West Vaughn, 10830 North Bryan Avenue. The one other thing was maybe screening the patio or porch off the back. I thought we had mentioned that.
Yeah, we could agree to that as well. So
Let's. Can you suggest some language? for us?
Site-proof screening from the patio or porch.
So TE 5 was that the stairwell on the eastern portion would be architecturally screened. We would just add that the stairwell and the patio would be screened to our west.
You've got that, Commissioner Pennington. You comfortable with that? Okay. You're comfortable with that as well? Okay.
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. If there's no further discussion from commissioners on this or other concerns, I'll take a motion if you're ready to make it.
I think I am. I'm going to do my best here, Mark. Okay. I move that we recommend to City Council approval of SPUD 1341 with the following additional technical evaluations. Technical evaluation number 4, that we require a 10-foot cedar fence to the east, along the eastern boundary. I've got the order wrong, Mark, so I'm going to try. TE5 is that we require site-proof screening on the stairwells and patio. TE6, that we require a 10-foot landscape buffer to the west, where limited due to parking, that there be a 10-foot masonry wall. And TE number 7, that no amplified music is allowed and that the decibel limit is set at 55.
That's correct, but to clarify that the fence is going to be on our west property line.
Gotcha.
And also that it's specified to be galvanized posts and cap.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's it.
I have a motion to recommend approval.
Wait a second.
That would include the windows too from the common areas before that stairwell. Just want to make sure. There's like a hall on their second floor that leads to the stairwell, and there's windows from that too. I mean, I just wanted to make sure it would include. Because it said like this.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the building. So you're saying there's a hallway along the west side that leads to the stairwell?
Yes.
Could we agree to interior shades on those windows instead of exterior architectural elements that would still prevent some visibility through?
Okay, yeah, shades are fine.
We need to add TE8 to require
Shading on the interior windows along the western portion of the building.
I'm good with that if you all are good with that.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Pennington to recommend approval to City Council on SPUD 1341, subject to the technical evaluations in adding TE 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 as read into the record by Commissioner Pennington. It's been seconded by, pause for effect, Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes when available. And that item is recommended for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission humor is a little hard for everybody else to get. All right. Item 21.
21 is PUD 1814, application by Alvin Gaines to rezone 1108 Northwest 116th Street from PUD 522 and R1 and R2 into the PUD 1814 district.
I am Richard Rice for the applicant who is present with me in the room. My address is 1401 South Douglas Boulevard, Suite A, Midwest City. In deference to Mr. Box, the request is to rezone a couple of lots from R1 and R2 to the PUD 1814. The large portion that's shown on your map, the SPUD 522, is an outdoor vehicle storage for boats, RVs, trucks, and the R1 and R2 lots are owned by the applicant who has expanded into those areas and is now seeking retroactively to rezone it to conform with the SPUD 522. Staff has recommended approval based upon the installation of sidewalking on western, trees, and a limitation on any changes to signage to conform to any code on monument signs.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Powers, this is your ward, ma'am.
So this is a very difficult application for me, I have to say. This is not a use that would be allowed at this location if it were being presented today. It kind of developed over time from what was, literally a gentleman who was allowing people to park their RVs in his backyard because they couldn't park them in their HOA neighborhoods, and it eventually became, I assume, a code enforcement issue, and they came forward with an application to permit that use. And with a lot of trepidation and some fairly tight controls that included things like no signage, and that the house would be used for office purposes and so on. So it was established. So the use is established. Well, now it's there, and it's a family business, and they have acquired additional property that they would like to expand onto. I have a really, really hard time finding any way that I can get behind that. So that's where we are. We did meet out on the side on a screamingly hot day and walked it and talked it. And, I don't think that the property that was originally permitted is really being operated in complete compliance with the underlying zoning that it already has. So that does not incline me to expand it. But even if it were being perfectly well operated, it's not a use that I would be inclined to expand. I will be more than happy to talk to listen to what other commissioners have to say. The property on the very corner of, is that 112th Street there?
115th.
115th, that cuts down through there. There's a lot of residential development that's taking place between Western and Penn off of that street. The street is not even hardly a real street. It's very problematic. There's a house on the corner that looks like it should have been bulldozed years ago, but nonetheless appears to be occupied at least some of the time. They would like to expand and take over the whole corner, and that might actually improve their situation because it would give them a little more room to do something that might mitigate their use. But frankly, I just have a very, very hard time with this application. It's kind of a sleeping dog, and I wish it would just lie there and sleep, and we didn't have to deal with it. But I assume there's some additional code enforcement issues, and that's what brought them to us in the first place.
There was the two subject properties, the R1 and the R2 properties, have the fencing around it, and the fencing did not comply with residential fencing, but rather commercial fencing, and that's what triggered a code enforcement action, which then ultimately led to this application. And the code enforcement action has been belayed until this is being dealt with.
Well, the use also wouldn't be allowed, though, right?
Under R1 and R2, that is correct.
Yeah, I mean, they may not have noticed you on it, but that they could have, in other words.
Well, he has owned those lots and just expanded into them without realizing he could not expand into them, and that's what triggered it. I would say that the house that's on the corner of 115th and Western is abandoned. It's not unoccupied, it's abandoned. It's got windows and doors that are actually knocked out. And we have made efforts to discuss acquisition of that house so that we would just have that whole corner. And frankly, I think the buyer or the seller is waiting to see the result of this outcome before they will commit to that kind of thing. But nobody is living there, and what happens next with that is based on what happens here.
The way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Commissioner Powers, but SPUD 522 was created to allow the use of storage west of the existing structure.
Correct.
And so the idea would be kind of the east of that was either more office or parking for the office or whatever, but not storage, which was your comment is, really not being used in the line because it's being used to store. This is probably the weirdest, drawn SPUD boundary. I think I've struggled with this one a lot when I looked at it, and I remember when we heard it in August or when it was in the packet in August, either way. I don't think we actually heard it then, but I looked at it. For me, the determining factor is that this is an existing use. It's not a proposed use. There are no homes built on the lots in between where these, I'm just going to call them legs of the screened-in area are. I think what would be a reasonable compromise that would just kind of force your client to a decision would be talking through the screening requirements there. You know, I've seen some other things with salvage yards and stuff where it just says, you know, it can't be above the height. I don't know how we do it. I don't know. But I hate to not allow the use because it's existing.
There is site-proof fencing all the way around all of the properties.
Yeah, no, I actually drove it because I was leaving Hatch at Chisholm, and I came down Western instead of getting on the turnpike, and saw the street. You can see into the, you can see what's in the property. So, and we've got, you know, you've just got that residential to the south, across the street is all R1, and there's a church on it now, and then there's a park. It's labeled a park.
And the access to the property is actually on what's marked on there is 116th Street along the northern border. And it's like a small little dirt private road that goes halfway back the entire lot. And that's where it then goes through a commercial gate into the lot. There's no access on what you've termed those legs.
Yeah.
Under 115.
Yeah, I'm trying to articulate to the other commissioners, my thoughts are, I'm leaning toward approving it simply because, or my vote would be leaning toward approving it simply because it's not as though we're allowing the use to be introduced. It's very much there, and there's really not anything that infringes on it today. So anybody who comes into this knows what they're coming into. Commissioner LaForge, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'm curious, why the rectangle on the top, why does that spud not continue to the west and cover the rest of that outdoor storage?
I think it was originally zoned appropriately on the back. It was a spud on the front.
So that is currently what, zoned what then?
Is that?
As part of that SBUD 522 is what it looks like from the map.
I'm talking about, if you keep going to the west, it's like it only covers half of it.
Oh, I see.
I thought that was C.
I think that the reason it's done that way is because the original
C4
zoning on the property required that the front portion be
That's right.
maintained
Okay.
as residential/office.
Okay, so
And
it's
so they're wanting
C4.
to expand the use all the way
Yeah,
to
I believe
Western.
it's C4.
Okay, would you go back to the picture that shows the aerial with the cars and things? No, a different one, the one that actually shows like a picture. Yep. I mean, I'm just a little bit curious because it's so odd. So those legs, I've kind of looked at who owns what. One thing that makes me less concerned is it appears that most of that is owned by the gentleman that owns everything to the northwest there, all those trees. So if he was terribly concerned, he knows what he's doing. He's a landowner and he could be here
This
objecting.
property is all in single ownership. I mean, the legs and the SPUD.
Not what I'm looking
the
at.
The pieces that are not encompassed by this zoning are owned by someone else.
It looks to me like it's owned by about 3 different people. Some land records I looked at. Most of it is by the gentleman that owns all the trees to the northwest, so it makes me less concerned. But it appears there's 2 other lots on the legs that are owned by somebody else, and I don't know.
Oh, I misunderstood what you were saying.
Okay, yeah, actual legal ownership. And then just kind of a comment, not our business maybe, but that bottom left rectangle shows that, and I looked on the land ownership too, is that your client started parking their things on somebody else's land, which I'll leave that to them and their neighbor. But the reason the black rectangle is smaller than that is because your client does not own the land to the west where the cars are
He's
parked.
actually negotiating for the acquisition of those lots.
Okay, yep, not necessarily our purview. It's just awfully odd in many ways, as others have stated.
You know, in keeping with your original, your comment about the original use and what's visible out there now, there are a lot of very big things parked inside that, you know, buses and tall trucks and heavy equipment and things that were not permitted by the original rezoning. It was really intended to be just what it was at the time that was brought, which is, you know, RVs and boats and cars and, you know, things that, recreational vehicles. But that's not how it's being used currently.
No, when you drive by it, there are lots of things that stick up above the top of the fence that you can see. So, I mean, it's, you know, I think it remains to be seen how the area will continue to develop. There's a nursery to the north. There's a property in between that's vacant. There's a bunch of land to the east. You know, we've had a lot of residential stuff come through along Hefner. Yeah. And so it is kind of a unique area. It's a really tough case. I have a hard time with it, but I think we need to not hem-haw and see where we are. So I don't know if there's any more discussion, or I guess I should ask, is there anybody who wants to be heard on PUD 1814? Hem-haw is a term of art used in land use. You probably never heard it before. Okay, seeing nobody, if there's no other discussion by commissioners, I think we should just, somebody try a motion and let's see where we are.
Well, I'll just bite the bullet and move that we deny PUD 1814.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend denial of PUD 1814. I'll take the second on PrimeGov when it's available, if somebody would like to make it. Yes, you want to move. And I'm going to have to be notified if we are wanting for a second or not. We do not have a second. Okay, so that motion would fail for failure to achieve a second. So you want to flip it and see what happens? All right, does anybody else want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval to the City Council of PUD 1814.
Could I, before somebody seconds that motion, can I ask a question of staff for clarification purposes? If this were not to be passed, then the end result for the property owner is that they would be in zoning violation as it relates to what we've been referring to as the two legs that are shown on the exhibit in front of us, and that use would not be allowed there. And in addition, to the east of the current structure as outlined by the current SPUD. Is that correct?
My understanding, yes.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. So accept the motion. I'll take the second on PrimeGov when someone would like to make it. And that motion was subject to the technical evaluations, you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. Please cast your votes when available. All votes should be cast.
Mine doesn't show, it doesn't show it's been seconded.
It was okay. The motion was made by Commissioner Pinson. It's been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle. You are more than welcome to voice vote if you'd like.
So I would vote nay.
Okay. All votes should be cast. And that motion has failed. So it's essentially continued at this point. Let's continue it for 2 weeks. I guess it comes back automatically. Is that correct, in 2 weeks? We have two members who are missing. Mr. Rice, who may be present during that time. So it'll be continued to October the 28th. Just as a matter of formality, I think it's automatic, but as a matter of formality, if someone could make the motion, just so we have that recorded for the record, that the next hearing on this would be October 28th.
I'll move.
Wait,
Go ahead.
could I take the November date?
Sure.
Would that be November 11th?
It would be November 18th.
18th.
Yeah, we only have, just for your purposes, we only have one meeting in November and one in December, just so you know.
Right, so November 18th?
Yep.
I would move that we continue this case until November 18th.
Okay, I have a motion. Take the second on PrimeGov.
And in keeping with my ambivalence, call me tomorrow, let's sit down and,
Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Highsmith. Please cast your votes on the motion to continue to November 18th. And that case has been continued. Mr. Rice, I would also just share that I think you working with your client to try to acquire the other land would be meaningful, at least as it relates to me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, those are, sorry. Next item on today's agenda is item 24, because items 22 and 23 were both deferred to October 28th.
They were?
Mr. Chambliss?
Item 24 is CE 1059. It's an application to close various utility easements and two portions of Northwest 50th and 52nd, all located at Northwest 50th and Northwest Expressway.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. With me is Ryan McNeil and Chris George. They are the developers for this project. I've got two exhibits that are coming around. I first want to show you the one that has the highlights. So the reason I showed you this, there has been a previous closing application, CE 988, that closed the lion's share of all of the public rights-of-way and roads through this. We haven't filed the vacation action as of yet, but we will do so. So I've highlighted the portions that represent this application. This is really a bit of a cleanup, and the reason for that is the manner in which 50th Street will be directed has changed since the last time we were before you. The second exhibit reflects that change in Northwest 50th Street. So as we had indicated the first time around, it has always been the goal that 50th Street will be rerouted in a manner to terminate at the place that makes the most sense, that being the signalized intersection right there that currently dies in the middle of what was a parking lot for the office building. So having 50th terminate at that signalized intersection is, we believe, to be a benefit for the traveling public. It does require some cleanup through closing and vacation actions. So these are really just cleanup of that. The staff report has two TEs. First TE is the perpetual easement TE that is the new one. We do agree with it in this instance. We understand that there are current utilities and infrastructure that are in place and actively being utilized. So whenever we go to relocate those, we will have to give easements and do whatever we have to do to make utilities, public works, and any other city department happy. TE number 2 is what I want to discuss, though. So TE number 2 reads, the realigned Northwest 50th Street must be constructed and dedicated prior to this application proceeding to district court for vacation. So we have been in communication with Eric Winger, Director of Public Works, for many, many months on this. One of the problems that we are faced with is how to handle Northwest 50th Street in what will be the middle of a very intense construction project for some period of time. So while we can agree that we will grant all the necessary rights of way, what we don't want to agree to is constructing Northwest 50th prior to the district court vacation. What we would like to say is the realigned Northwest 50th Street must be constructed and dedicated at the time in which the Public Works Director deems necessary. The reason being is we've had these conversations with Mr. Winger so that we have 50th Street right away perhaps dedicated, but it's closed so that it can operate in the middle of the construction zone. It would make no sense, we think, to go and build and then dedicate this road to the city. We will then immediately turn around and seek to have it temporarily closed so that we can construct this project, which there is a process to do that. Then it is likely that 50th Street will be absolutely destroyed by the time construction is done. The city will then, as the owner of the road, have to go and fix it. We think the better course of action is to allow the Public Works Director to tell us when it's necessary for that to be built. We won't be cutting access off to the east. There will be a new access that will go to the north and connect to Northwest Expressway. So access that is coming from, say, May Avenue seeking to get to Penn will still be able to do so. They will just do so through the north through Northwest Expressway. So we will not be cutting access off. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, the developers are here, but we cannot agree to the way TE2 is written.
One clarifying question, if I may, Commissioner Powers, before I turn it over to you, just on this road closure issue. So the point you're making is that by doing it the way it's proposed, you'd build the street, then you'd tear it up, then the city taxpayers would have to repave the road, restore the road, repair the road. If we do it the way you're proposing, then you're going to have to do that.
Yeah, the street won't get built until we're done, or it's close enough to where it's a safe manner in which 50th can be opened, and then we'll construct it one time. But the way that it's written, yes, we would construct it, dedicate it to the city. The city would then take over obligation to, maintain the road. There's a process to go close public streets. Look at what First National has done for 2 years.
Sure.
Except here, the road would be decimated by the time we turn it back over.
Understood. As a taxpayer, I like the alternative you're proposing. I'm curious from staff if they're comfortable with that language, because I've never heard language like that before. So I just want to make sure that somebody smarter than me says that that is doable, enforceable, and doesn't create some issue we don't know about.
The TE and the recommendation both came from Public Works and Utilities Department.
Okay, so they helped craft that language for inclusion today. Okay, I'm so sorry. Commissioner Powers, you used your word. I just wanted to get that out while Mr. Box talks really fast, so I wanted to get all that out. Go ahead.
No, I'm perfectly all right with that. I wanted to ask you, is this along Northwest Expressway going to give you the room for your decel lanes that we talk about every time we
Yeah.
talk about that?
So we're confident that when we have all this, we're going to have all the necessary decel access, rights of way necessary to construct the project. And the second one shows that.
Okay, so the other question I have, something I read, and I don't want to take the time to go find it now, suggested to me that the first time this was done, the same language about, approved and dedicated now instead of later, was part of that approval process. I mean, whatever we do here today is not going to affect whatever was imposed or agreed to before.
Correct. And so, like I said, things have kind of changed. The alignment of where 50th is has changed. Our understanding of timing of the project has changed. We have been in constant communication with Public Works on this issue. We just want to make it clear because this is a new way that we want to present it in meeting with Mr. Winger, that this is how we want the TE to be read.
Okay. I don't see a huge, the construction of the Chesapeake campus was a real education in how destructive construction can be for me. Along Western, along 63rd, and it went on forever and ever. And, we ended up with two major section line roads that were just, a mess. And again, were repaired on the taxpayer dime. So I think this makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm all in favor of it, as long as Mr. Winger's all in favor of it.
Well, we're giving him the authority. And I do just want to point out for, Barry Lodge that his new magical TE, we're here and just absolutely agreed to it. And I was happy to tell him as we walked in that I wasn't going to fight him today.
I'm sure Mr. Lodge will sleep better tonight knowing that for sure.
Yeah, right.
Primary concern is your agreement with things.
So I just need a little bit of clarification. What I heard from Mr. Box is you have Mr. Winger's agreement to your wording?
No. I haven't. Okay. What I'm saying is I floated that idea by him. We want to give him, the Public Works Director, the authority as to the timing of the construction and dedication.
Okay. So I hear that, and then what I heard from JJ was that TE2 was provided by Public Works. So, but is that before or after?
I talked to Mr. Winger this week after staff report came out.
Okay.
I think the consensus is just that they're in agreement that the language is acceptable as it relates to how we are proceeding with this proposed.
I think it makes perfect sense as proposed.
It gives more authority to the city, frankly.
Yeah.
So.
If city council doesn't like it, they can change it.
There you go.
There's
Okay.
that.
So I'm going to move approval. If there's anybody else that wants to be heard on this item.
I do not have anybody signed up to speak, and is there anybody who wants to be heard on this CE 1059? Okay, you're clear.
Commissioners, anybody else want to be heard on this?
With the modified TE2.
Yeah. So I'm going to move approval of item number 24, CE 1059, with the modified TE2.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend approval to City Council on CE 1059, subject to the technical evaluations as amended. It's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And that item is recommended for approval. Next item on the agenda today is item 25.
Item 25 is CPA 2021-11. It's consideration of a proposed map amendment to the comprehensive plan, changing the land use topology from rural low to rural medium on a tract of land located at the southwest corner of Southeast 104th and Choctaw Road.
Hi, everybody. I want to introduce myself again. I am Veneria Mujica Ortiz. I'm the new program planner. So I'm going to be working with the CPAs. The CPA 011 is a request to change the land use typology area designation from rural low intensity to rural medium intensity on approximately 160 acres located at the southwest corner of Southeast 104th Street and Choctaw Road. It has a associated zoning 10770. Here is the LUDA map, so you got an idea where it's located at. The subject site is located, the subject site is surrounded by rural low-intensity designation at this moment. In terms of city services, the site, the parcel, it falls outside of the water service zone. The nearest water connection is located 8.39 miles southwest to the parcel. In terms of wastewater, the parcel is far from existing sewer lines and not expected to connect to sewer services. The nearest sewer connection is located 9.82 miles northwest to the parcel. In terms of fire, the parcel meets rural response time for its fire service set by Plan OKC. In land use, the dominant land use pattern in the area is undeveloped land with some rural residential uses to the west. That residential uses to the west have an average lot sizes of 2.2 acres. And there is a spot 1075 to the north that is a rural commercial district. It's a little rural commercial district there. In terms of zoning, the site itself is agricultural district. There is a residential RA to the west, and there is a little spot 1075 to the north. For this specific site, it's important to mention the environmental sensitivity area, because almost 77% of the parcel is covered with upland forest, and is located on a vulnerable aquifer. So it's part of the Plan OKC to protect upland forest areas. And it's part of Plan OKC 2 to protect vulnerable aquifers from pollution and depletion to ensure a continuous supply of clean groundwater. The consideration to request a change LUDA designation from rural low intensity to rural medium intensity. The site falls within the rural target response time for emergency services. The area is not served by water or sewer services. The city has no expectation for future water or sewer services in this area. In findings, the proposed rural medium intensity LUDA designation will be surrounded by rural low intensity LUDA areas. The city has no expectations for urbanizations or extensions of urban infrastructure, such as water or sewer services in this area. The site is not proximate to either urban low or urban future LUDA designated areas, as is typically the case for rural medium areas. The site is considered environmentally sensitive to the aquifer vulnerability and the presence of upland forest on over 77% of the site. At this moment, and with the information that was provided by the applicant, the staff recommend denial to the change.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you.
I just have one. On the map that shows the existing RA, my understanding from the staff report is that the 160 acres to the west has an average lot size of 2.2 acres. Is that right? Okay. But it's an RA zone. And when was that done? Does anybody know? 1075. That's been a while.
It's been a while.
Okay. All right.
I may have missed something. I may have missed definitions and understanding RA versus RL and RM. Where do they waterfall?
RL and RM is the comp plan designations for the LUDAs. RA is the zoning designation of the land. That's the zoning, not the comp plan.
RA is a broader designation, and within RA is either RL or RM?
No. Those are the LUDA overlays that don't have anything to do with the zoning. RL, rural low, is 5 acres. RM is 2 acres. There is no such thing as a 1 acre LUDA, which is why we have this problem about every other meeting. But RA zoning exists, and my memory on RA zoning is I think it is 1 acre. Somebody clarify that?
It's generally 1 acre, but you can go down as low as 30,000 square feet.
That's what it is.
Depending on the
That's what it is.
open
Yeah,
space.
30,000 square foot minimum, right? Ms.
certain-
Wells, do you have a comment on that? Are you sure? Okay. Are you positive? Okay. Mr. Box, you are the applicant in the next item. Do you have comments on the Plan OKC presentation?
Well, actually, the applicant here,
Real
too.
quick, let me ask one more clarification question, because I was almost following you, except that this one that shows AA almost all around it, then why does another page say it's rural low intensity? Rural low intensity is an overlay over AA?
That's the comp plan designation. AA is the zoning.
So it's agriculturally zoned with rural
Rural low right now.
low
LUDA.
LUDA.
Yep.
So David
Got it.
Box, 522 Colcord Drive. And this is gonna scratch, but I'm gonna move it out of my face. Not bad. So here is the problem with the comprehensive plan in this area of the city. You have well, let's start at RA. RA, by definition, and I printed it out from the municipal code. The RA district is entitled the RA Single Family 1 Acre Rural Residential District. The RA district provides single-family residential housing with rural amenities in the rural development areas of the city. I think by all accounts, it's considered a rural development pattern. So let's go find the LUDA that would fit the category of the RA district. Well, as we flip through, and I actually brought my comprehensive plan with me today. As we flip through, what we will find is when we first get to the rural low, it is 5 acre, so rural low intensity, typical lot size 5 to 10 acre, minimum lot size 5 acre. Okay? So let's see what we have next. Rural medium, perhaps we find something there. Typical lot size 2 to 5 acre, minimum lot size 2 acre. Okay, so we're still searching for the rural development LUDA that would fit the rural zoning designation that exists in our zoning code. Well, the next thing we find is the urban low intensity, which there the minimum density is 4 dwelling units per acre. So there is not a single LUDA that exists within the comprehensive plan to fit the rural 1 acre residential development that provides for rural amenities in the rural development areas of the city. So the staff report clearly points out that this site is not near urbanized areas or near expected areas of service. We agree. We don't seek urban development. We seek rural development pursuant to the RA zoning district, consistent with what is to our west, what is to our southeast, what exists to the north.
Staff report does, it's just to be clear, it says wastewater. It says the site is far from existing sewer lines and not expected to ever be connected to sewer service. That's bold, but it'll be a long time. It's 10 miles away.
Yeah. So this is not an area that is, I think, ever going to be served with sewer. The fight that we typically have, of course, is the half-acre lots. There, the concern is the aerobic septic systems. I have heard, I think, from staff that the same concerns that exist for the half-acre development don't exist for the 1 acre developments with aerobic because the lot size is enough to provide for enough spray area and still have play areas, pools, whatever you would want to have within the 1 acre. So we believe that it is appropriate to change the LUDA if that's necessary. The problem becomes there is no LUDA for 1 acre development. It simply doesn't exist. It's a flaw in the comp plan. It's a flaw that has been pointed out, I think, since 2012 when the comp plan was adopted, but there doesn't exist a development pattern that fits what the zoning code calls rural residential district. So we would ask that you amend the comp plan, and then in the second application, we'll ask for you approve an RA development. I have talked to Commissioner Privet. He's not here, but Commissioner Pennington and Commissioner Cravens were on the line with us sometime this week, and he did voice support for the project and did not voice any concerns that I heard.
Any questions for staff or the applicant from commissioners?
I have a question to staff. Are we likely to see any kind of actual resolution to this chronic issue anytime in the near future?
Which issue?
that we have, that,
I realize that I'm not trying to be rhetorical like Mr. Box, but
that
are we
we have
talking
a
about the spray
discrepancy
field? Okay.
between what our zoning code provides and what the comp plan provides with respect to these relatively small rural developments.
Sarah?
Okay, Sarah Welch, Planning. With all due respect, I brought my comprehensive plan also.
There you go.
And,
Uh-oh.
and
Uh-oh.
so the rural medium, the part that Mr. Box did not read, says that smaller lots, basically down to 1 acre, may be appropriate in rural medium areas if they're part of like a cluster development. So it's intended, you know, in our rural areas to find, and that's one of the reasons that our rural districts allow smaller lot sizes, is so that you can preserve large areas of habitat or trees or riparian areas in order to achieve the density in one of the rural residential zoning districts. With all due respect, this is not the zoning case. This is simply the request to change the LUDA. And so if it's okay, I'll reserve zoning comments until after that decision.
You can, but we can't help but have the conversation simultaneously. So could you tell me what it means in your view as a comp plan expert on cluster development?
Let me comment on that. To me, the idea of that comment with respect to cluster development, when we were talking this through 100 years ago, when we were developing the comp plan, had to do really with like typology or topography. You know, that there are areas where just given, you know, creeks and rises and ditches and other stuff like that, you know, you were going to have pieces of property where you're going to end up with the residential development on it sort of clustered on the site.
Oh, I see.
And so the ability to kind of encompass the area that would not physically be developed into the application, so that you're, and you know, the idea was then you have a chance to preserve those creeks and the tree cover and, you know, all those other things that might be out there that you don't want people just to come and mow down in order to meet some, you know, designated square footage. So, I mean, to me, those are not really competing or contrary. They're not contrary concepts. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong, and I just hope I understand exactly what you said before I answer.
Well, that's very sweet, Sarah.
I think I do. I think what she's explaining is that you're going to have a large tract out there, and you're going to have a lot of area where in these rural areas, because it's so undeveloped just generally, where you may be forced down to 1 acre lot sizes. And so the comp plan contemplated that there would be areas where 1 acre would be required because so much of the other rest of the land was unusable. I get that. But what it doesn't do is that, you know, 1 acre lot sizes are really popular for people who want to live in rural-like developments. And in my mind, too, cluster, if you wanted to interpret it that way, you've got 160 acres of RA to the west. I know we're not talking zoning, but we can't talk one without the other, unfortunately. And so you've got already existing development there that's 2 acres. A 1 acre development next door, it's starting to feel like a cluster of a different type in my view. This is clearly a pattern of development in the area. And knowing that you don't have any chance, according to the report, of having sewer or water, and this isn't a half-acre lot request, makes it pretty straightforward for me. It makes it feel like I'm clearly going to support it. I don't see any reason not to support
The amendment?
it. Yes.
The amendment? Okay.
Yes.
We have our expert who's wanting to speak.
Okay.
I've got to ask a question so that I can follow this. That lot to the west, what is the LUDA and what is the zoning?
It's RA, so it matches the zoning we seek, and the LUDA, I believe, is rural low.
Rural low, yes.
So it's out of conformance with the LUDA.
That's why I asked, because what got done next door is different than what you're asking for today.
Commissioner LaForge, if I could answer that part. The RA and the RA2 districts they predate Plan OKC. And when we went through Plan OKC in 2015, one of the common complaints that the commission at that time dealt with was the appropriateness of the RA zoning district and where to put it and where to place it. And often, and Commissioner Powers can correct me if I'm mistaken, but often it was whether or not the RA district existed already in that area. And basically, if the RA district existed, it was very difficult for the Planning Commission to say no, which is what Mr. Box's argument will be today, that there's an RA subdivision right next door. So through that Plan OKC process, 2 rural LUDAs were created. The rural low, which supports 5-acre tract residential, which is the AA zoning district, and then a smaller rural, which supports 1 to 2 acre lot residential, and the most consistent zoning district we have for that currently is RA2. Obviously, we have to review all this and figure this out in the code update. But right now, those are the 2 LUDAs and the zoning districts that are the most consistent.
RA2 is a 2-acre minimum. RA is a 30,000 square foot minimum.
The only thing that the best way to think about it, really the only difference is the density.
Got it.
Both of them allow 30,000 square foot lots, so you can cluster them, but the RA2 versus the RA1, they both have sliding scales of density depending on how much open space you provide.
I see, okay.
If I may, it's not 30,000 minimum lot size. That only happens if you add all this, there's a table that you add.
That's what she's explaining,
Yeah,
yeah.
a tremendous amount. So it's not like RA doesn't get us 30,000 square feet. It gets us 1 acre. If we provide this tremendous amount of open space, then perhaps
can
at the
shrink
plat,
down
you
to-
could do that.
Okay.
But it's called the 1 acre rural residential district.
Okay.
So it's
Got
not
it.
a shell game. And remember that when we come in with the half acre, staff oftentimes asks us to go to 30,000 square foot minimum. So.
Got it. Yes, ma'am.
It's important to mention that for this specific project, we work with the information that the applicant provide for us. When the application was submitted to us, we didn't have any idea what was proposed. There was not lot size. It was nothing.
Got it.
That we can work with.
Okay.
Okay. So.
In other words, you weren't told this would be a 1-acre development.
Well, we went and looked into the application for zoning.
I see.
And that's when we assumed it was a 1-acre lot.
Okay.
But we didn't have any of that information in the application, and I cannot assume anything if I don't receive the information. Okay, that's the first. Second, I think the cluster is a good idea for this project because we're not talking about the 77% of forest that is in this project too. Almost all the southern part of this project is all covered in forest, okay? It's good wood, it's a lot of native trees in that area, it's a habitat in that area. So we are not against any type of development in this area. What we're saying is, let's sit down and see how can we, because we don't have an idea of how the project is gonna go. We don't know where the houses are gonna go, how they're gonna distribute the plots. We don't have any of that information.
Well, that's an unfortunate part of this process, but it's not something that we can ask an applicant to come in and show us at the point they want to rezone exactly how they may plat it. That's why there's a separate process for that. When we look at the zoning application, of course, we can have the conversation about open space and tree preservation and all those sorts of things, which is what we'll do next. But we don't ever have an applicant come through 1, 2, 3 in a row, or I should say, I don't remember one in a really long time, if ever, where we had a comp plan amendment, then a zoning application, and then a plat, where we could see all that in one swoop.
So we made our decision of denial with the information we had.
Got it.
That's, so if we sit down and we talk about, a little bit more and when the zoning gets worked out, then something can be worked out. But again, we can only work with the information we were provided.
Understood.
So I would be all in favor of us having a process that encourages that. I mean, I think, the idea that you just don't is not really a good way to end that conversation. I think, whether the comp plan has to wait until, the amendment has to wait until the zoning is in place, and then we encourage the applicant to sit down with staff and talk realistically about what they expect to do in terms of if not platting, then, layout. I mean, you can come close, especially on a piece of property where you do have topographical challenges. You know where things are going to go, at least generally speaking. And I don't think it's a good idea for these different decisions to be put in boxes that somehow just can't be opened until a certain stage that is too late for the right decisions to get made.
Right, but I would never be in favor of asking applicants on a process basis to have plats drawn up for a property they don't know if they can get it rezoned. And I think all the comp plan is asking is this an appropriate area for more dense development than exists today? It's a limited scope decision. We were very clear with people in the public, especially the development community, that we wanted them to come through with these comp plan amendments before the zoning, not try to bypass that part of the process, which is, I'm assuming, why this is here anyway. And if we did that, all they'll do is bring the zoning through, and while we talk about the comp plan, the zoning is going to go to city council and get approved or denied. But it's going to move on without us at that point.
Oh, I agree, and I do think that is a good thing for the comp plan, with or before.
Right.
Usually with the zoning.
Right, and I think typically that's what we're going to see now, because staff doesn't bring through, at least not that I've seen, a comp plan amendment without a zoning request coming through with it. They're not playing offense by going out and saying, well, this really should be urban low now. Let's go ahead and bring this forward. They're not doing that. So, any other discussion on this? I think we probably need to see where we are and move on.
I don't know how relevant this is, but I had an opportunity to visit with the council person in this area, and unless this matches what's next door to it in lot size wise, he's not going to be for it.
Okay. Well, while I certainly respect the council person's opinion, I think that we should make the decision based on, what we see before us and let him ferret out the other issues that may be at play.
Agree.
Yeah.
So one more question. If we're going to be looking at this actually this is the one we're on now, rural medium. So it's 2 acres or larger. Which is
But by comp plan.
By comp plan, which seems consistent with next door. There was 2 acres, average of 2.2 acres. Am I following the next item, or we have reason to believe they're going to want 1 acre? If we rezone it to RA, they could do smaller than the comp plan. Okay, I mean, the LUDA was ignored next door? No? Yeah, it was ignored next door. Pre-LUDA.
Pre-plan OKC.
That was my last question. When was this done next door?
Because it's 1075, it would have definitely been before 2015.
It's not that long ago, though. Okay. Okay.
All right. Somebody want to try for a motion here? See where we are? Somebody, anybody, on anything?
I'll be the lucky one here. I move we approve of the comp plan amendment, CPA 2021-00011.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the comp plan amendment. I'll take the second on Prime Gov. Motion was made by Commissioner Pennington. It's been seconded by. Are we waiting for a second? We're waiting for a second. Okay. Anybody? Okay.
I'll ask a question while you're considering it. If this were approved, but then the next item were denied to be RA, then what? It's agriculture, right?
We'd be making a recommendation to City Council to deny the zoning. They would have the final say on that. They'll have the final say regardless.
Yeah, but what I was going to ask is what then could be built there? If we've got a LUDA saying you could do houses as small as 2 acres, but it's agriculture, so you can only do 5 acres?
Yeah, the current zoning would have to be developed in accordance with AA per the code.
Which is 5 acres.
Well, it's, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to fail the motion for failure to reach a second if we don't get one, so. Okay, so let's try the motion the other way and see what happens. Somebody, anybody?
I'll move, we deny comp plan amendment 2021-00011.
Okay, so I have a motion to deny the comp plan amendment So, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Highsmith. A vote yay is a vote to deny. A vote nay is a vote not to deny. So we're clear. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast? Okay. And the comp plan amendment fails. So, or is denied, excuse me. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 26, which is the companion zoning item.
Item 26, PC 10770, application by Hawassi 80 LLC to rezone 14624 Southeast 104th Street from the AA district to the RA district.
Again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is the companion item. We seek RA for these 160 next to the 160 RA that touches our western line, the 80 acres of RA that is south and east of us, and the 40 acres of RA that exists slightly north on Choctaw Road. RA is consistent and compatible with the area, and not just the area, but the property that touches us to the west. So I believe it's hard to, I think, support a denial of RA next to RA next to RA. So we would ask for your support. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Box.
And if I may, to Commissioner Hinkle's point, we'll have to come plat it. So if Councilperson Stone is dictating what he wants to happen here, we've got to come plat it. And this commission has seen fit to deny plats that comply with zoning. So certainly, perhaps you think you have the authority to, seek different lot sizes on portions of it. So this is simply the zoning. We will have to come plat it.
I would argue under our subdivision regulations and our comp plan, we have the right to amend plats that are submitted to us that we don't believe comply
Well, we're
with
gonna
those
find
subdivision
out.
regulations. We sure are, Mr. Box. Anybody have comments on this in Mr. Privett's absence? Okay, if there's no comments, let's just make, actually, let me verify. Is there anybody who'd like to be heard on PC 10770? Okay. I'll take a motion one way or another.
Well, I'm going to be prepared to make the motion, which maybe nobody's tracking this the way I am, but it's in a moment going to be to approve it. Because if I look at a map of LUDAs, they're all still going to be rural, low intensity everywhere. It's going to be consistent. And we're going to have a RA next to RA, and it will allow somebody to develop residential. The LUDA would direct that it should be 5 acres or more. And we'll decide at that time, and after the council's also considered it, and a plat comes in, what to do with it. But my motion is to approve the rezoning of this to RA.
Okay. I have a motion to recommend approval to City Council on PC 10770. I'll take a second on PrimeGov if someone would like to make it. By the way, just to make certain here real quickly, it's been seconded by Commissioner Hinkle, but there are no TEs, so we're in good shape. Okay, I have a motion, a second to recommend approval on PC 10770. Please cast your votes. All votes should be cast. And it is recommended for approval.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda today is item 27. Item 27 is PUD SP 1674F. It's an application by Modern Elements Building Company for a specific plan in PUD 1674, located at 3540 East Hefner Road.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. This is an application for a specific plan. I believe this is the fourth specific plan that has been part of this project. It conforms to the PUD, and we would ask for your approval.
Okay, this is in Commissioner Pennington's ward. I'll just note for the purpose of the record that staff's review of the specific plan for the development indicates the proposal is consistent with the technical requirements of PUD 1674, Master Design Statement and Master Development Plan. Commissioner Pennington, comments on questions on this one?
No comments or questions. I'm in support.
Is there anybody here that wants to be heard on PUD SP 1674F? Hearing and seeing no one. If there's no discussion from commissioners, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move approval of specific plan PUD 1674F.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the specific plan. I'll take the second on PrimeGov. It's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. 1, 2, 3. All votes should be cast. Oh, Hinkle. Now all votes should be cast, and that specific plan is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Remaining items on our agenda today, 28, 29, 30, and 31, were all continued earlier in our meeting. So that is the end of our separate items to be heard. Next item on today's agenda is additional items, communications, and reports. Do we have any Planning Commission committee reports? I don't believe we will, but we do. Okay. Planning Commission members, Commissioner Clare,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Powers.
I just wanted to say a word about the passing of former City Councilman Sam Bowman, who appointed me to the Planning Commission these many years ago. He was such a wonderful person who gave his whole life to public service. He was so modest and self-effacing and never ever in any way pompous or self-important. He really was a person who believed that if you sit down with people and talk, you can work out almost anything. And, we'll really, really, really miss him.
Thank you, Commissioner Powers. Commissioner Hinkle? Commissioner Highsmith? Commissioner Pennington? Congratulations on your wedding, sir. Commissioner LaForge? Okay. Planning Department. Sarah? Planning Department? You sure? Development Services. Municipal Counselor. Citizens to be heard. Barry Lodge, Jared Martin. Okay. If there's no other business, I'll take a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.